Welcome back. Today we are talking with Bonney about burnout. And great first segment there. We got through three of our five factors. And the next one we like to bring forward is have an outlet. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so these next two are ones that don't necessarily relate to what's going on in the situation. It's more things that you have control over on your side, with you. And the outlet is, do I have a way to kind of get my mind off of this stressful thing? So often we come home from work and we spend, an hour complaining about what our boss did and what happened and blah, blah, blah. And we're basically reliving all of that stuff, which just, extends the suffering, right?
Yeah.
So when we have an outlet, it's that thing that gets our mind off of whatever's stressful. Just, and some people, it's quiet pursuits. We were just talking about meditation, about hanging out with our pets, puzzles, books. Other people, it's not as quiet. It's exercise. It's the boxing gym. It's the, heavy metal concert screaming at the top of your lungs, whatever, And my ex used to ride dirt bikes, and he'd ride dirt bikes through the woods. And every once in a while, he'd come home with a bruise or, oh, don't hug me too hard. I think I broke my collarbone. And I was like, why do you do this? Like, you're not going to knit back together so well after a while. And he says, here's the scoop. When I'm on the bike, all I can think about is not hitting that tree. And so if I'm frustrated with you, or I'm angry about work, or I'm worried about money, all that goes away for a minute so that I have more capacity to deal with it when I'm off the bike. And I'm like, that's really smart. And that's what this outlet is, this thing that just gets you away from thinking about whatever stressful thing is going on. And that's massively important in being able to let off the steam.
Mhm. For me, I like to do a lot of the things you just mentioned. And I mentioned in the break, going up to the cottage, staying there when no one else is around. On my dining room table, there's a puzzle, a 1,500-piece puzzle that I'm sure would drive most people crazy. But if I spend 5 minutes doing it, it literally shuts everything else out of my mind because I'm looking for this one piece of puzzle now. And I stop thinking about what's bugging me. And there's a adult paint by numbers type thing. So,
Yes, I've been doing those. That was
you
what I
know,
was about to
I've
say.
I've got one of those as well. And the dog. I've got a, synthesizer here. I've been teaching myself how to play. Anything that gets me away from, sitting in front of the camera or the computer or doing anything. It all helps. It really does, and it doesn't have to be big things.
Right, exactly. I mean, it can be a month-long vacation overseas, like I'm leaving for tomorrow, or it can be, and you said it, 5 minutes doing that puzzle. Even just that 5 minutes of completely focusing on something different can just recharge your battery so that you aren't empty. I literally started working with a metaphor here, and I've got this guy, and I didn't even put this here on purpose, but this guy,
Oh yeah, yeah, the Mr. Inflatable floaty thing from Family
the
Guy.
advertising like wavy guy that his arms go up and he gets
Yeah.
little. I always think about the outlet as kind of that burst of air that gives you new life to be able to take on whatever's next. And so, we're not trying to solve all the world's problems. They're still going to come and we're still going to get floppy sometimes. But by having that outlet, you get that burst of air to be able to take on whatever's next.
So let's go to our last one, social support.
Yeah, and I think we might have talked about this a little bit on our last episode, but this is so huge. Human brains need social connection. Even though we could go through life never leaving our house with Amazon and DoorDash, we got everything covered.
Yeah.
We need human connection. And as I was talking about with our first item of predictability, when I think about an emergency room, right? You don't have a whole lot of predictability there, but they have incredible social support. I know that nurses and doctors in the ER create such close friendships because they're on the front lines together dealing with this social stuff, this stressful stuff together. And so when they can laugh together, when they can have a potluck, when they can do pranks, or just say, you know what, you look like you're having a tough day. Go get a cup of coffee. I'll take this one. Those little things are such a massive again, a burst of air into your body to refill you and get you to be able to deal with the next piece. So that social one is huge.
That social one, as you were describing it, I can't help but think that it kind of plays into some of the other ones, like see progress. If you have a good social support, then I'm thinking that someone external may see change in you, which would help boost, yourself and make, validate that you're on the right path, or you think, hey, I am making a change.
Yeah.
I'm
And
struggling.
that's a great observation too, is sometimes we don't see the progress in ourselves. But when somebody else is like, hey, you know what? You're doing a really good job. Oh, wow, cool. And maybe it's during your performance evaluation with your boss once a year. That's that social piece too. For me, it happened. I'm running a marathon on every continent. And when I did the Antarctica Marathon, I was climbing a particularly hard hill, and I felt like I was making zero progress. Like I kept looking up at the flag at the top, and I was I was like, I'm not getting anywhere. And I've been running for at least 27 years. And finally, another runner came down, and they were like, "Hey," and I think they could tell that I was having a hard time. They said, "Look how far you've come." And I turned around and I looked at the beach behind me, and it was, where we started the hill, and it was really far away. And all the poor runners behind me were like teeny tiny little ants. And that was incredibly motivating, but I never would have gotten there by myself. So you're absolutely right. That social piece comes in so many of these to show us that we are making progress.
You mentioned something interesting there. You never would have got there on your own. You needed others. When it comes to burnout, then is that something we need to help us get out of burnout? Because sometimes it's people who cause us to get into burnout.
This is true. And this ties back to the control conversation we were having around having too much control,
Mm.
right? Sometimes we try to grasp everything and take huge control because other people let us down, because other people don't do it right, because they don't do it our way, right? So you're
Mm.
right. Sometimes the other people are what caused the stress in the first place. And oftentimes, if we can combat that, find the ability to trust, find the ability to work with people, it really does help us realize that we're not alone. Because that is one of the fundamental stressors in life, when we feel like we got to do this all by ourselves. And yeah, it's a tough place to be.
It seems funny that we're a social animal. We need our social support, and yet it's that social support that drives us crazy as well. So,
Right. It's the great and of life. Two very different things exist at the same time.
yeah. So how does this link with something else in your notes here is self-efficacy?
Yeah, self-efficacy is the belief that we can do something to make a situation better. So it goes back to the control piece, believing that we can do something to make this better. And when we think about increasing the social connections, increasing the social support, taking advantage of our outlets more, trying to redefine progress and look for it when we don't feel like we're having any, or look for patterns that might indicate some sort of predictability, what we're doing is we're taking that control of what we can control. And there's an incredible, and we're almost taking action on situations. And this is one of the things that helps us feel less stressed. When we feel like there's something we can do, it goes back to the hope I was talking about. There's something we can do to make this situation a little better. And that's where the self-efficacy comes in. And the way I like to say it is action shrivels anxiety. When we move into action, we ask questions, we seek social support, we look things up online, we try something. We are now not just standing on the porch of the old comfort zone, sad that we can't get back in and worried about where we have to go. We are starting to move into it and learn. And as we're learning, okay, that wasn't the right step, I'm going to go over here. But we're not worrying about it because the anticipation is always way worse than the actual action. And so taking intelligent, strategic action, but taking action, even when it is scary, can help build that self-efficacy, see that there are some places where you have control, and get through it a little bit more easily.
Isn't there a difference, though, between that in the office environment and having burnout and in what would call it outside the office, your personal life, I guess, your life burnout? Would If you're burnt out, can you be burnt out in one and not the other? Or does one affect the other and lead to the other? How do you deal with it? Do you deal with it differently?
Well, see, this is the challenge. You got one brain and one body to take with you to work and home. And it all does kind of start to meld together. And even though you may have a great home life, if your work life is causing you incredible stress and burnout, that's going to bleed over into your home, and you're not able to be who you want to be at home, which is going to cause all sorts of challenges. And vice versa can happen too. You might have a great job, but because of all the stress and the anxiety and the challenges and the whatever's going on at home, that's going to bleed into your work. Because once you get to that point of burnout, you're not able to let go of some of the stuff to compartmentalize the way we might need to get through the day.
Well, that's an interesting point because at home, you may be in control of some factors you're not in control of in the office.
Right.
So you end up with a conflict. And does that make it harder for people to address their burnout or identify that they're even burned out? Because they could be frustrated at home that they can't get Sally to, finish a report on time, but they can go home and they can get little Billy to make sure they've done their homework on time. So you go from one extreme right to the other sometimes.
Yeah, and I think there are so many factors that are involved here that it's hard to make a direct
Mm,
correlation like that. But and part of it could be, hey, I got Billy working well for me at home doing his homework and all that stuff, and yeah, I'm frustrated with Sally, but I know I'm dealing with Sally, so I can make sure that Billy gets what he needs to be a fully functioning adult someday. So the
yeah.
why, which we talked about on our last episode, could be a big factor in reducing the stress of dealing with Sally. But see, the key is we need to be recognizing what these stressors are. And that's the value of knowing this stuff, is we can start to do a little inventory. Do I have outlets? Do I have any predictability in my job? Or are things just flying around, hit me in the head willy-nilly? Do I have any control? Or where do I have control that I can start to exercise that to reduce the stress a little bit? This is the beauty of having this information, is you can start to take that inventory and say, where can I improve this?
And I guess you can look at it through different lenses, the work lens and the home life lens, because at home, I need an outlet. Okay, gardening works at home, but at work, obviously, I can't do that, but I can walk around the block at lunchtime for a while.
Exactly. Exactly. And it takes that little bit of creativity and the willingness to set the tough stuff aside and say, where do I have some control? Because again, we get caught up in that. I don't have any control here. They're ruining it for me, or this situation is terrible and I can't do anything. And it's really
Right.
easy to just go there and sit in that little victim hammock and not take control. Now, some situations are catastrophically such that you need to seek external help, whether it's therapy, whether it's police intervention, whether it's HR. There's some situations that these tactics that I'm telling you don't apply because the situation is that beyond what a normal human should be able to deal with by themselves. So keep that in mind. I don't want to gloss over any of
Right.
those much bigger situations. But again, once we start to take that inventory, we can say, all right, what is going on here? Where is the stressor? And one of the things that's hardest is trying to look for the biggest stressors, because our personal and professional lives are so tightly woven together, it is easy to look for the low-hanging fruit, but you're just hitting a symptom of a larger problem. So it really
Mm.
is important, and you said this earlier, to look at the reality of all the pieces and really say, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to look directly at it. I'm scared of it. And that's the thing, you know?
Yeah, and that could be the part that helps you out of burnout, I guess.
Right.
You know, or at least recognize that you're in burnout.
Yeah, exactly. And that recognition is huge. You know, once you reach that point where you're like, oh, that's what's going on, then you can start taking that action, which really helps.
Well, on that note, we've come to the end of our second segment. We are talking with Bonney today about burnout, and we will be right back. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.